Adding fuel to the fire as police arrest over 2,000 pro-Palestinian protesters on U.S. college campuses nationwide, Beijing is seizing the chance to push its anti-U.S. propaganda. State-controlled media zeroed in on those arrests, accusing American police of, quote, violently suppressing students and crushing dissent against the U.S. government, and claiming the U.S. is displaying totalitarianism. So how does the Chinese Communist Party treat its own protesters? In 1989, Beijing deployed tanks that ran over student protesters who had gathered to ask for democracy and better access to education. A survivor of the event, now in exile in the U.S. NTD spoke to Li Hongqing, a witness of Beijing's massacre.
During the 1989 student protests in Tiananmen Square, the Chinese Communist Party sent over 200,000 troops to surround Beijing. They sent in tanks and fired at unarmed students and citizens.
Back to the growing anti-Israel protests sweeping U.S. college campuses, President Biden addressed the protests Wednesday. He defended students' right to protest peacefully while also condemning the violence and disruption to campus life.
We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard. In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But neither are we a lawless country.
Anti-Israel protests started at Columbia University in late April. Protesters set up encampments demanding the school divest from Israel due to its war with Hamas. Demonstrations later spread to college campuses nationwide. They are largely peaceful, though turned violent at certain places. At Columbia University, protesters took over a building and smashed windows in Hamilton Hall. NYPD moved in to clear them out at the school's request. Violence broke out at UCLA Wednesday, where protesters clashed with counter-protesters. The two sides fought over metal barriers. Meanwhile, China, Russia, and Iran are doubling down to paint the U.S. as a country in chaos and turmoil. Their state media churned out almost 400 English articles about the protests over the last 2 weeks. Sean Haynes is a former reporter with Chinese state-controlled Xinhua news agency. He told VOA that it's Xinhua's policy to extensively cover Western demonstrations. He said at Xinhua, when we chose the running order for news, foreign protests were always promoted, especially if it was around election times. Look how scary foreign democracies are. Aren't you glad China doesn't have this?